38th Anderson Sport Performance Lecture, named in honor of our second department chair, Dr. Eugene Anderson. Today's lecture will be shared by Mr. Eric Nadel, who is in his 21st year as the lead voice of the Texas Rangers radio broadcast. It marks his 37th year of broadcasting Rangers baseball, which is the longest of any announcer in the history of the franchise, and the second longest continuous current stint with one team in the American League to Kansas City's Denny Matthews in his 44th year. Mr. Eric Nadel was named the 2014 Ford C. Frick Award for Excellence in Broadcasting and was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York last July. Mr. Nadel joined the Rangers in 1979 and called games on both radio and television. In 1982, he joined with Mark Holtz to team for a 13-year run on WBAP radio. Mark Holtz was Dr. Anderson's neighbor, close friend, and our first Anderson Sport Performance lecturer. Mr. Nadel is a 7-time recipient of the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Association Texas Sportscaster of the Year Award and 2-time winner of the Associated Press Award for Best Play-by-Play in Texas. Eric is a graduate of Brown University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science with aspirations to become a lawyer. He also called football and hockey on the college radio station. He has also called several seasons of professional hockey, in addition to the Dallas Diamonds of the Women's Professional Basketball League. Eric Nadel is a 1991 inductee in the Texas Baseball Hall of Fame. Eric and his wife, Jeannie, reside in Dallas. There will be a brief 2-minute video introduction followed by Mr. Nadel's lecture. Thank you.
Full count in a row for Ryan. Here's the payoff pitch. He struck him out swinging. Strikeout number 5,000 is history for Nolan Ryan.
The 1-0 pitch. Swung on.
High drive, deep right field. Back goes Payton. It is history. A 3-run homer. Ramon Vasquez. The Rangers have scored 30 runs tonight. Absolutely unbelievable. It is 30-3. Here comes the pitch. Breaking ball, strike 3 call. The Rangers are going to the World Series. After not going to the World Series in their first 38 years, the Rangers are going back for a second straight year. Thanks to all the Ranger fans. Over the years, you've invited me into your homes, your cars, your places of work, your computers, your iPhones, and other devices I still can't figure out how to use. You gave me a chance to learn this gig on the job, and you kept listening through those very lean years. As a team, we still haven't won the big one, but we won this award together. The pain and frustration we've experienced has brought us closer together, and in the meantime, at least we have this award to celebrate. I can honestly say I'm proud to be a Texas Ranger. I know you're proud to be Texas Rangers fans. We're fortunate to make our living in the world of baseball and broadcasting. We do what we love to do, and going to work is fun. We have the opportunity to bring joy into people's lives, to touch people with the gift of this great game. And most important, of course, we have the chance every day to be a light in the world. Let's never forget to keep that part of the dream alive. Thank you all so very, very much for this amazing honor. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. And as always, thanks for listening.
How do I follow that guy? Thanks very much. Thanks very much for being here. It's a really long title for this lecture, but what it comes down to is Baseball has changed an awful lot since I started doing this job in 1979. And a lot of the changes in the game have caused changes in my world too. A lot of the changes in the world have changed the way I do my job. If somebody had told me my first year in 1979 that baseball players would be earning in the major leagues an average of over $4 million a year, which was announced today, that was not an April Fool's joke, I would have thought it was. My first year in 1979, the average major league salary was $113,000. The highest salaried Texas Rangers player, Sparky Lyle, made $300,000. And that's only because we inherited a contract that he signed with the Yankees. Right now, the minimum major league salary is $500,000. Players in those days were almost part-time employees. They had off-season jobs. Players used to substitute teach. A lot of them sold cars. They would go back to school. 25 different players went back to school and became physicians. That could never happen today. A baseball player could never afford to live on a physician's salary. But the point is, the players didn't spend as much time at the ballpark. They didn't work out all off season. They went to the ballpark in season between 4 and 5 o'clock. They took a little batting practice, they got ready to play. I did the same thing. On the road, I would take the team bus to the stadium. It would usually leave sometime between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. Now keep in mind the games then were at 7:30, not at 7 as they are now. But now players start arriving at the ballpark at 1 o'clock. All of the stadiums have these incredible locker room complexes for the players. They call them clubhouses, and they really are. They've got huge TVs and video libraries. Players can watch video all day of the players on the other team. They can watch their own at-bats. They can take extra batting practice. They can work out. All of those things available to them at the stadium. The manager usually gets there at about noon now to start analyzing all of the matchups with all the information that he has. When Billy Martin managed, he was usually at the racetrack until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There was many a day where we would be waiting, when Billy was managing the Yankees, to see what the Yankee lineup was going to be, because Billy wasn't there yet, and eventually he would call it in from the racetrack to one of his coaches, and they would post it up there. Now the lineup's usually posted by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The point is that my day, which used to start at around 4:30 or 5, now starts at the ballpark at 3. The manager, with whom I get to do a 5-minute interview every day, wants me in his office at 3:15. So I do what he says. I'm there at 3:15. Now that's just my day at the ballpark. It used to be there wasn't much I could do at home to prepare for a game. About all I could do was get the newspaper or newspapers. When we were home, I'd get the Dallas Morning News, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. At the time, we actually had a third paper, the Dallas Times-Herald. I would read all their accounts of the game. If we were on the road, if we were in Detroit, I'd get the Detroit Free Press, I'd get the Detroit News. That was it. USA Today didn't exist. USA Today did not debut until September 1982. If I wanted information about out-of-town games, it was really hard. SportsCenter didn't begin until the end of the 1979 season. Now, I can spend literally all day reading accounts of our game on our websites, their websites, blogs. I can rewatch the entire game if I want to. I can watch the highlights of every game. I can watch every game in its entirety if I want to, with all the things that are available to me. Stats. I can get stats 100 different ways. Traditional stats, sabermetric stats, computer projections, predictions. Batter against pitcher. Pitcher against opposing team. Pitcher at night, on the road, on Wednesday. Pitchers who throw from a low arm angle, who are primarily ground ball pitchers, against their division in April. If I want that printout, all I've got to do is click on a website and I get it. I've got old stats, like batting average, pitchers' wins and ERA. I've got new stats, like OPS and win share and runs saved. Opinions. I can read columns all day on ESPN, MLB.com, Yahoo, CBS, all the blogs. Here we've got Lone Star Ball, you've got Bleacher Report, you've got the Newberg Report. I could literally spend every waking hour, quote, preparing for a game. The minor leagues, we used to know nothing. Now, you've got Baseball America. Here we've got the Newberg Report. You have MILB.com, a website just for minor league baseball. Biographical stuff on the players. I can just Google a guy. Guy comes to the major leagues, Google him. There'll be some articles about him. How about media guides? In 1980, the Ranger Media Guide was 56 pages long. This year's guide, 408 pages. I used to read all the team's media guides. I don't have the time to do that now. And the print is so small I can't see it anyway. There's even a subscription website called Player Profiles where we can basically have them do the Googling for us. And they've compiled just about everything that's ever been written about a player, even minor league players. Last year, the Rangers used 64 players, major league record. Every day it seemed a new guy would come to the major leagues. I'd go to Player Profiles. They had something about this guy in high school, this guy in college, what the scouting report was on him when he signed. All that stuff's available. How about scouting reports? When I started, I went up to Jim Sundberg, the Ranger catcher, and I said, look, I'm converting from being a hockey announcer to a baseball announcer. Can you help me out here? We were about to play the Tigers to start the season. Can you give me kind of a scouting report on their hitters? And he was kind enough to do that, and all through my first year, he pretty much would do that. Now, I don't need to do anything like that. I can go to Fangraphs, Brooks Baseball. I can see every pitch thrown by every pitcher. I know that this guy threw 68% fastballs, 22% sliders, 10% curveballs, how fast the pitch was, how much it broke off a vertical plane and off a horizontal plane. Is a batter a ground ball pitcher? Is he a fly ball pitcher? Does he pull the ball? Does he hit to the opposite field? Does he bunt? Is he a good clutch hitter? Does he hit with men in scoring position? What's his average in late and close situations? Even for defense, there are stats now. Range factor, defensive runs saved, if I want to know what the numbers say. And strategy, I don't have to wonder anymore if the manager bunts. I can go to Stats Inc. and see how many times he's bunt, how many times he's put on the hit and run, and what situations he does it. That's all before I get to the ballpark at 3 o'clock. And when I get there, press notes. In 1979, the Ranger press notes were one sheet. It had the league standings. It had one paragraph of what we call ... dots. Jim Sundberg has an 8-game hitting streak. ... John Matlack has allowed 1 run in his last 17 innings. ... Now I get 20 pages in my stat pack. And then I get 6 to 8 pages of notes. A huge ... paragraph on every player. The manager holds a press conference every day. That didn't used to happen. It used to be very informal. We had 3 writers and the play-by-play announcers, and that was it. Now the manager holds a scheduled media session every day. There are far more questions asked, so far more information disseminated because there's so many more questions asked and there's so much more analysis. So all of these things, the access to information, have improved exponentially. Well, how about access to the players? Well, that's gotten worse. The players and the play-by-play announcers like us who basically work for the team, we used to be in it together. There used to be a feeling of camaraderie. We traveled together on the same flights. We were all about the same age. That might have something to do with it. We all made about the same amount of money. That might have had something to do with it. there was no talk radio. There were no blogs. There was no Deadspin looking to catch guys doing stupid stuff. There were no people criticizing players on Twitter. Now players are very sensitive. They tend to see the media in, something of an antagonistic light. And as a result, it's actually harder to get information from the players than it used to be, which is unfortunate because to me that's the most interesting information. But with all these sources of information, the point is, my challenge is, how can I get enough information to fill the gaps, the time between pitches, that's really interesting, and that you guys don't already know if you're avid Ranger fans and you're going to look up stuff. What stats are really relevant, what stats are really interesting, and what's just filler? And another challenge for me now is these new stats. How many of you know what OPS is? See some hands if you know what OPS is? Okay, not many. OPS now within baseball is recognized by more people as a significant stat than batting average and a lot of these other stats. But if I'm going to use it, and most of you still don't know what it is, even though it's been around for a few years, do I have to explain it every time I use it? Do I have to say, well, here's Prince Fielder, he's hitting .250, he has 4 homers, 18 RBIs, his OPS is .750, and oh, by the way, OPS is on base percentage plus slugging percentage, and the average OPS in the league is .700. If I don't tell you that, I've just given you a number that means nothing. So what I have to do now, instead of in the old days, just get information anywhere I can get it, now I have to depend on my own ability to recognize what's interesting and what's not. What's a stat, what's a meaningful stat. And most important, what can I find out about a player that a fan can't find out? Well, that's the stuff I can find out from the players. When I can find them, because they're not just sitting in front of their lockers now. They're in the players' lounge. They're in the batting cage. They're in the video room. But when I find them, I want to know what happened on that pop-up last night. Why wasn't it caught? I want to know from the manager, why didn't he change pitchers at that certain time in the game? I want to know from the batter, what were you thinking when the ball left your bat? Did you think it was a home run? Did you think it was going to be caught? Those are the questions I can ask that you can't. Priceless information that I get comes from the other team's announcers. And this has not changed. They're the guys who see their team every day. They're the guys who can tell me, the Detroit announcer, for example, he can tell me, yeah, Ian Kinsler's been turning the double play well, but he's having trouble on ground balls to his left. Or Kinsler is swinging at everything these days. He's chasing sliders in the dirt. Their manager isn't going to tell me that. Their announcers will. So the announcers and I exchange scouting reports between ourselves before the start of a series. And a lot of times now we just do it through email. We don't even have to talk. I'll send a 2 or 3 page thing to the Oakland announcers before opening day next week on what's gone on with our team in spring training, how I see each of our players. Those are ways I can get information that isn't just available to be pulled up on a website. One incredible change, my ability to relate to the audience. Because of Twitter, Facebook, I can relate daily throughout the day to my audience if I want to. It used to be we would get letters. Remember them? You know, they had stamps on them, you know. Dear Mr. Nadel, we listen to you every day in Amarillo. Please say happy birthday to Aunt Minnie, who's in a nursing home. She's going to be 88. Or somebody would call the Ranger switchboard. We actually had pen pals in some of these cities. They'd send us their pictures. We'd put them up in the booth. Now, I'm available to my audience on Twitter. I've got 20,000 Twitter followers. I used to be on Facebook. That got too overwhelming. And then somebody hacked me and started selling Nike shoes in my name. So I figured out that wasn't going to work. But on Twitter, you know, I can get opinions, and I do, about everything I say. If I make a mistake, somebody's going to notice it. Somebody's going to point it out. And if I happen to throw an opinion out there, either on the air or on Twitter, that somebody doesn't agree with, there will be hell to pay. And that happened to me 2 years ago. I happened to mention on Twitter that I thought there was a particular weakness in Yu Darvish's game, and the Twitter world blew up. And all I had done was made an observation. But for those who are big fans of Darvish, and I'm glad we've got lots of them, because I didn't support it with numbers. I didn't present a legal brief making my point. I wasn't entitled to say it. The fact that I had just seen every pitch he'd ever thrown wasn't enough. And that I've been doing this 35 years wasn't enough. So I got in a big snit on Twitter, and that's the last time I'll ever give a baseball opinion on Twitter. Now I tweet only about music. My friend Nancy Nichols is the travel writer and food writer for D Magazine. While all that was going on, she called me up and she said, "You idiot, don't you know the internet always wins?" And she was right. But at least I'm getting feedback every day. And when the Rangers won the American League pennant, when I made that call of the strikeout of A-Rod, and I started getting messages on Facebook about where people were and what it meant to them, it was overwhelming. I'm sitting there crying about these stories people are telling me about having to drive off the road into parking lots of 7-Elevens. That could never have happened before. I could never have had that kind of interaction with the audience. This is a tremendous, tremendous blessing. Because, you know, the baseball announcer, he's in your home every day or in your car or somehow in your life. It's not like the other sports. Our relationship with the audience is different, and it's so much better now that I can actually know who the audience is. Every now and then, I'll find a Twitter follower, look up their page, and if I think it's interesting what's on their page, I'll send them a direct message, and we'll wind up communicating. I want to know who people are who are listening. It's really interesting to me, and I want to know what they want. I want to know what kind of information they want. So the fact that I can get that kind of feedback is great for me. Fortunately for me, the Rangers don't expect me and don't ask me to tweet several times a day about the Rangers. Some announcers have to do that. A major league broadcasting job was filled recently, and it went to the guy who was the best at social media. There were several qualified candidates, obviously. The guy who got it was the guy who was best at social media. There's probably going to be more and more of that. Teams have to be concerned about growing their fan base. Now, the actual job itself has changed too. When I started, the radio announcer usually worked by himself. There wasn't a color man, there wasn't an ex-player, as most teams have now, even on radio. There wasn't a lot of back and forth, lighthearted banter, all of that. Well, now, the games are so much longer. In the 70s, the average game was 2.5 hours. Last year, 3 hours and 8 minutes. That's 38 extra minutes of work for who? Me. The ball's in play. How many minutes in a 3-hour, 8-minute game? Guesses? 18. Correct. The ball is in play for 18 minutes in a 3-hour, 8-minute game. Is it going to be more interesting to hear one guy droning on for those other 2 hours and 50 minutes? No, it's going to be more interesting if two guys are talking back and forth and cracking jokes. And so the nature of baseball broadcasting has changed. Plus, we used to go back and forth between radio and TV. That can't happen anymore because TV is too big a production. There's so much money involved now. There are so many graphics, so many pre-packaged things that have to go into the game. The TV director wants an announcer whose title is play-by-play announcer, but he's really an MC. He's really a traffic cop. They can't afford to have me go in there in the 4th inning and change jobs with Steve Busby because it wouldn't be all organized. And when I started, there were 30 Ranger games a year on TV. The other 132 games, I was all you had. But I had no TV monitor. I was doing the best I could to describe the game, but I didn't have replays. I didn't have a center field camera. Now I see the same things you see on TV. Sometimes we even have a dedicated monitor that has extra stuff that isn't actually being carried on the air. So I can give you a better description off of that, which is a good thing because the broadcast booths now are 100 miles from the field. In the old stadiums, the broadcast booth hung from the upper deck. The upper deck usually hung over the backstop. We could identify pitches. In Tiger Stadium, we could hear things said at home plate. Now, as new stadiums are built and they want to save the best locations for luxury suites, we get moved higher and higher and higher. In Pittsburgh and in Washington, we literally work on the roof. When a ball is hit, sometimes we don't even know if it's a chopper that hit the ground in front of the plate and went up in the air, or if it's a pop-up. You hear a lot of this phrase. It's hit in the air to left field. Instead of it's lined to left field, it's belted to left field, it's popped to left field, it's blooped to left field. I can't give you that description because I don't know. You can work off a TV. It's dangerous. Every now and then the director loses the ball. If you're doing radio, you're in trouble. The other thing is, because of all the TV, announcers tend to assume that you all know what the players look like. You know if a guy's big or small. You know if he stands deep in the box or up in the box. You know if he wears his uniform baggy or tight. So a lot of radio announcers now take shortcuts. They don't give you that anymore. Well, I refuse to do that. For me, my job hasn't changed in that I'm the eyes of the audience. I'm pretending you're all blind. You've never seen this guy. And I'm going to give you the most description that I can give you so you can picture what's going on at the ballpark. But one of the best changes for me is I have a chance to become a better announcer every day by listening to other announcers. It used to be I could pull in an out-of-town station once in a while. I could hear the guys from St. Louis on KMOX. Now, with XM, with MLB apps, I hear every radio announcer doing Major League Baseball and a lot of minor league announcers. Why is that important to me? I steal stuff. Everybody uses different phrases. To me, what makes a broadcast really interesting is changing the phraseology, changing the way you come in and out of inning breaks. Don't say the same thing over and over again. So I'm listening to other announcers. I'm driving to the game, and with one hand, I'm scribbling something I hear that I like. Some announcers give me nothing. I know not to listen to them. Vin Scully, who is the god of baseball announcing and is working at age 87, still, every time I hear him, he uses some phrase that I've never heard before. He's inventing phrases at age 87. And I'm writing them down, and when I get there that night, I'm writing it down in my scorebook, and I'm going to try and work it in if I like it. If there's no way to work it in tonight, I'm using it tomorrow. I get CDs. I buy CDs of old games. They have them back to the 40s. I'm listening to announcers from the 40s and the 50s, hearing the way they describe things. Some of the things are just too corny. I can't get away with them. Some of them I use. I'm working that stuff in. I never had a chance to do that stuff in the past, and I love it. The lifestyle's changed. Travel has really gotten easier. We used to take commercial flights. When a game was over, the bus would go barreling to the airport, hoping we could make a 6 o'clock flight to get from one city to the next. If not, then the traveling secretary had to scramble and get us in a hotel that night so we'd take the first flight in the morning. The players had it in the union contract that if it wasn't a charter flight, they had to sit in first class. Well, there's never enough first class seats. So they had this rule that if they sat in coach, the team had to buy 3 coach seats for every 2 players. And it would cause problems because we'd get on the plane, everybody would get seated, and then some of these planes would be oversold. You've been on these planes, people get bumped off. Well, they're seeing all these empty middle seats. And they're saying, well, why can't I sit there? Well, the Texas Rangers own that seat. Why can't I sit there? The Texas Rangers own that seat. Not very good for public relations. Now it's charter flights. The plane is waiting for us when the game is over. So there's good food on the planes. Makes things a lot easier. Press boxes are much better equipped. Obviously, we've got wireless, we've got internet, we've got TV access, we've got information. We have much better food. But as I told you, the location of the booths is terrible. Meal money's gone up. Our salaries have gone up as well. not nearly as much as the players, but most of us, at least in the major leagues, don't have to work in the off season anymore. I used to do hockey in the off season. Now, fortunately, I don't have to do that. When the season's over, we're worn out. It's 162 games in 180 days. Fortunately, there are fewer doubleheaders. They're the bane of a broadcaster's existence. And as a kid, I loved every year on my birthday, I grew up in New York, I would make my dad take me to a Mets doubleheader at Shea Stadium. And he hated it. By the middle of the second game, he'd be saying,